Hey guys, it's Lucky Ghost here. Today we're going to be going over the two-hand Necromancer. This build is so powerful. You've got amazing survivability, you've got amazing damage, and the two combined are pretty rare in the game at this level. This build barses over 91k, and as far as Greymoor goes, not a lot is changing for this. So if you've enjoyed the build in the past, we're going to make a couple of minor changes to it for this patch, but for the most part, it's staying intact, which I'm totally excited about because I love this build. I've done everything in the game on this build, VSS hard modes, VAS hard mode. I mean, you name it, we've been there and we tackled it on this guy. It's been a lot of fun. Okay, so let's talk about what has changed, what's changing in Greymoor. We're not going to be a vamp anymore because we lost the whole reason we went for it, which was the 10% resource regeneration. The other thing that changed for the Necro class itself, really the only thing of note, is that Detonating Siphon got placed back onto the global cooldown. This doesn't really change anything for the build. It's going to have a negligible impact on your total damage output. On the positive side, the two-hand weapons in the Masters Arena have been given a buff, and a perfected version of them is being added to the game. The perfected version adds a minimal increase in damage, but it is an increase in damage as you are getting an additional 1200 or so penetration from that perfected version. But the other exciting part is that the Masters weapons as a whole, the two-hand master weapons as a whole, got a buff. They're now going to be able to hit up to 24 mobs and increase their damage for each one up to 24 times. That's pretty huge. We're going to use the Master's Weapon more than we already were, and I'm definitely going to make it a bigger part of this build moving forward, as long as that is the case. First up, let's go over the skills we're going to be using on this build in Greymoor. All right, so much like we were using before, we're going to be using Blighted Blastbones, Brawler, Reverse Slice, Camouflage Hunter, and Detonating Siphon. We don't ever use Camouflage Hunter. It's simply slotted here for the passives that it's going to provide. You're going to get 3% increased damage from the Fighter Skill passive. It's also going to give you, while slotted, Major Savagery, increasing your weapon critical rating by 2191 and gaining Minor Berserk for 5 seconds after you deal critical damage from an enemy's flank, increasing your damage by 8%. Finally, we got Flawless Dawnbreaker in the ultimate position, and we're not really going to use this. This is more there for the passive 3% fighter skill damage to further buff our spammables on the front bar. Okay, on the back bar, we're sticking with the Maelstrom bow for now. We'll be using the Skeletal Archer, the Endless Hail, Resolving Vigor, Barb Trap, Detonating Siphon, and Pestilent Colossus. Pestilent Colossus being the ultimate that we're actually going to use in combat 99% of the time. Resolving Vigor is going to be your flex spot. Whenever you've got sufficient healing, you're not worried about keeping yourself alive for any reason, you can go ahead and replace that with a Fighter's Guild ability for the extra 3% damage. For the short while that you're back there, it's not going to make a huge difference because we're only back here for a couple of abilities and we get right back on the front bar. So when we're looking at our skills, the skills that we're going to be using are going to be our Blast Bones, our Brawler, Reverse Slice is our Execute. Brawler is our spammable. Reverse Slice is our Execute that takes Brawler's place. Anytime one of the mobs around us hits 31% health or below, we're going to focus on that with Reverse Slice, and that is going to do up to 300% more damage to that mob, and all the mobs near it will take 78% of that Execute damage. This is huge. I can't emphasize enough how powerful Reverse Slice is and how satisfying it is to use. If you're taking a lot of incoming damage, stick to Brawling. We're not going to use Camouflage Hunter, like we mentioned. This is here for the buffs. We are going to use Detonating Siphon anytime it's cooled down. So once you see Detonating Siphon blow up, you use it again. It's very important that you let Detonating Siphon blow up because it does, as you see, after the full duration, it deals an additional 7,681 damage for a corpse explosion. So you always want to let Detonating Siphon run all the way to 0, blow up, and then recast it, and not before. Likewise, same thing for Skeletal Archer and Endless Hail, which we're going to be using on the back bar. You always let these run their full duration. before reapplying. So let them fall off and then recast them. The reason being, Skeletal Archer deals 5% more damage each time it attacks until it dies. So the last attack is very powerful, and this guy ends up doing a ton of single target damage for you as a result. But you've got to let him go all the way until he expires, so you max out that damage. Same thing with Endless Hail. Endless Hail does 1675 physical damage to enemies in an area every 1 second. However, when we have the Maelstrom Bow equipped, increase the damage volley deals by 320 each tick. Okay, that's great. Also increases by 110 damage every time it ticks. That's why we go with the Endless Hell morph, because it gives us longer duration, which means we get 110 added to the first tick, 220 to the second, 330 to the third, and so on. And that's why we let it go for the full duration, because that last tick is going to be its most powerful tick. Vigor is our flex. We use it if we need to, not else. We're not Barb Trap. You want to try to have 100% uptime on Minor Force. When you put Barb Trap down, it says duration 60 seconds, but the Minor Force uptime, once it's triggered, is actually 18 seconds. So what that means is every time you put Barb Trap down, you've got to replace it again 18 seconds later, get that Minor Force buff back again. This buff is very important. When you start parsing, I cannot emphasize how important it is that you try to get to nearly 100% uptime on this Minor Force buff. It increases your critical damage by 10% for the duration. Very, very helpful. And then Detonating Siphon, we're leaving this on the back bar because you'll notice while slotted, increases your damage done by 3%. Same thing on the front bar, while slotted, increases your damage by 3%. We're actually going to use it on the front bar. I mean, you can actually use it on the back bar. It doesn't matter where you use it, but that's the reason it's double barred. It's for that passive 3% damage. Also, we also have a very cool passive in the Gravelord skill line called Death Knell. Increase your critical strike chance against enemies under 25% health by 10% for every Gravelord ability slotted, right? Which is why we want these two here. For that 20% increased chance of critical striking enemies below 25% health. Now, likewise, you can, if you know, we don't really use Flawless Dawnbreaker, like I mentioned, we're putting it there for that extra 3% damage during the duration of the fight. If you're accidentally using Flawless Dawnbreaker and it's just very unsatisfying to have that ult sitting there buffing your bar, feel free to put Pestilent Colossus here. You're not going to get that 3% damage, but you are going to get that 10% increased critical chance in execute, and our execute damage is substantial, so a 10% increased chance to execute ends up being very effective as well. So you can put that there and do nearly the same amount of damage. Okay, next up, let's go over attributes. We're going to put 18 into health, 46 into stamina. This is going to provide to you the best combination of health and stamina. You want to shoot for approximately, if you're a newer player with low CP, you want to go closer to 18k HP. You can get down as low as 16k as your champion points get higher and you get more damage mitigation built into your character. For potions, we're going to go with the Essence of Weapon Power. It's going to grant Major Brutality, which increases our weapon damage by 20%. Major Savagery, which gives us 2191 weapon critical rating. And finally, restores 7,582 stamina immediately and gives us Major Endurance, which increases our stamina recovery by 20% for the duration of the potion. Lava Foot Soup is an incredible food. It's a great food for a new player as well. It's got the really interesting ability to scale with you as you level. A lot of foods have a level requirement. Not Lava Foot. You can use it at level 1 and level 810, and it's always going to be amazing for you. It increases your max stamina by 4,515 and your stamina recovery by 451. That stamina recovery right there is going to be critical to your sustain on this build. If you try to run around as a stamina necro without stamina recovery on your food, you're always going to have resource problems. And if you're not using your potions on cooldown, you're always going to have resource problems. And this stamina recovery is part of why we are able to wear the gear that we're going to be wearing, and all of this combined allows for us to do the most damage possible. Okay, when we are running Brawler, what we're going to run is 5-piece Locestes, 5-piece New Moon Acolyte, and the Masters, the Perfected Masters Greatsword. You notice we're not wearing a monster set because whenever you're wearing a master's weapon, you have to forego the monster set. If you'd like to see an interesting video comparing the damage numbers wearing a monster set versus wearing the two-handed master's weapon while brawling, I created a YouTube video for that. The link will be in the description below. And then of course we're going to use the Maelstrom Bow infused with weapon damage enchantment. The two-handed master's weapon will, of course, be precise. When I go for absorb stamina enchantment for that extra sustain, and then when I want to squeeze out extra damage, I go for the damage health 9 double dot poison. Here you see deals 1936 poison damage per second for 3.5 seconds, and then also deals 1257 poison damage per second for 6.4 seconds. Best in slot poison to put on your weapon when you're trying to squeeze out every ounce of damage. Do not bother with poisons unless you're parsing and you're really trying to hit that next benchmark, or if you're doing a very difficult content and you feel like another 2 or 3k damage is going to be the difference, because that's about all you get out of poisons, and they do cost money. For every single one that you smack the mob and the poison goes off, you know, that's a little bit of money out of your bank account. So don't run poisons 24/7. Run them when you feel like you need them. We're going to go 40 into Thaumaturge, Precise Strike 64, Piercing 41, Mighty 64. Next up, we'll take 61 into Master at Arms. In your green CP, it's going to be... your green CP is one of those things that changes depending on what you're doing. But a nice, well-rounded setup for all content is going to be 44 into Tumbling, 40 into Shadow Ward, 75 into Mooncalf, 56 into Tenacity. When all you're doing is parsing, you can go ahead and max out Mooncalf and Tenacity, because obviously you don't need to tumble and you don't need Shadow Ward. Most likely you're not going to need a heavy attack, hopefully, either. So it's mostly important to get your Mooncalf max out. You only get 1 additional % for that last 25 points because of the diminishing returns. So it's not very important to get this up any higher than 75 on a regular basis. And then we'll throw a few points into Warlord, Sprinter, and Bashing Focus, 31, 19, and 5 respectively, just to reduce the cost of some of those abilities. But feel free to play around with that to suit your playstyle and the needs of your content. Sometimes you're dodge rolling a lot, or some content requires you to do a lot of block casting, so you want that block cost reduction. It's going to depend on what you're doing. Your red CP, red CP is the same way. It's going to depend on what you're doing. What I'm running on the average basis is going to be 11 into Quick Recovery, 27 into Hardy, 64 into Elemental Defender, 81 into Ironclad, and 87 into Spell Shield. Okay, so as far as our rotation goes, it's a pretty simple rotation, and it's one of the reasons I love this character. I can focus on the mechanics, and I don't have to stare at the up times on my abilities as much. I can focus on just the rotation. It's got a fairly static rotation, a little less so with Greymoor now that we've got to work Detonating Siphon into the rotation, but it's not a problem. What we're going to do is we're always going to start off the battles by summoning our Archer, our Endless Sail, and our Barb Trap. Swap to the front bar, okay? And then we go into a standard Necro rotation. Necro rotations, whether they're magic or stamina, are usually Blast Bones, spammable, Blast Bones, spammable. Your Blast Bones, in effect, is going to be every third ability as a Necromancer. Whether you're Stamina or Magicka, this is usually the case. So now let's demonstrate the core piece of this rotation, which is going to be your Archer, your Endless Hail, Blast Bones, Brawler, Brawler, Blast Bones, Brawler, Brawler, Blast Bones, Brawler, Brawler, Blast Bones. One more time, Brawler, Brawler, Blast Bones, Bar Swap, Archer, Endless Hail, Blast Bones, Brawler, right? So we just did the Archer, the Endless Hail, then the Blast Bones, Brawler, Brawler times 4, right? Then we went back to the back bar. That's it. That's 90% of the rotation. Now, after you get used to doing that, what you're going to do next is you're going to get good at weaving in your detonating siphon and your barb trap as they're dropping. Okay, so every time one of those drops, you're going to replace one brawler with the ability that is dropping. So if your barb trap is dropping, you'll do Blast Bones, Brawler, barb trap, Blast Bones, Brawler, Brawler, Blast Bones, Brawler, Brawler, right? You replace one brawler with the barb trap. Same thing with the detonating siphon. Every time the detonating siphon drops, you replace it. You replace one of the brawlers with the detonating siphon, right? So it's still a very simple rotation. All right, let's demonstrate the rotation a couple of times, and I think that's everything. Start by throwing down the back bar. And there it is. All right, that was the whole rotation right there. You just keep going just like that. And you put out a tremendous amount of damage. All right, with your ultimate, what you want to do to maximize your damage output is to lay down all of your dots and then drop your ultimate so that they are ticking all the way through the 8 seconds of increased damage you get from your Pestilent Colossus. All right, and using your potions on cooldown. Do not forget when you're building this character to get all of your passive abilities, all of your passives from your Gravelord skill line, from your two-handed skill line. Use Wrecking Blow and Executioner when parsing instead of Brawler and Reverse Slice. So it'll look like this when you parse, easy enough. And then on your bow, all of these passives, of course. Medium armor, we're going to go 7 pieces of medium. If I hadn't mentioned it, I will post a picture of the gear setup as well, so you guys can look at that on the website. And for the Fighter's Guild, you want all of these passives, the first 4, and racial passives. And your alchemy medicinal use, mandatory. You've got to get this. Do it. I've got a how to power level your alchemy guide, so you can get this alchemy from 0 to 50 in 3 or 5 minutes. Don't put it off. It's not hard to do. Just look at the guide and you'll be done in a few minutes, and you'll have your medicinal use level 3, which is going to give you 100% uptime on those potions. I cannot overstate how important those potions are for your build, for this build, and for all builds in this game. Potions are incredibly important, and so are food. So do not hold off on using food. Don't worry about the expensive, or at least don't worry about the good potions until you're at least 160. But after that, yeah, start using these potions, especially Essence of Weapon Power. They're not too expensive. They're not bad. All right, guys, and that wraps it up. Like I mentioned, on justlooted.com, I'll be posting the full written guide. So if you need to know the gear setup or the skills or the passives, I have all written down there if that's easier to reference. If you don't want to go to the website, here it is. We've got Perfected Locestes. They're all going to be max stamina and divines. New Moon Acolyte, max stamina and divines, 7 pieces of medium. All 7 of these are going to be medium. Then perfected Locusts. Regular Locusts is fine until you get perfected. It's a small increase in damage when you get to perfected. Your Maelstrom Bow, and then of course your Master's Greatsword, and eventually your perfected Master's Greatsword. Be sure to check out the YouTube video I did where I compared the damage of the perfected versus the non-perfected. Spoiler, it's not huge, so if you don't have the perfected one yet, don't sweat it. Get it when you can, but it's not really going to change your output that much. All right, guys, that concludes the two-handed Necromancer Brawler build for Greymoor. This build does all of the content. It's done all of the content. And with Greymoor, Brawler just got that much stronger through the improvement to the two-handed Master's weapons. So it was a beast before. It's a little bit more of a beast now. It's in a great place. It's a fun build. Enjoy it. And as always, guys, I'm Lucky Ghost. I stream ESO 5 days a week on Twitch. So if you've got any questions about this build, check out my schedule, swing by and ask me any questions you have. And I'm happy to help you get this build going or help you farm some of the gear. I'm always there helping my chat out. So swing by. Have a good one, guys. Take care and be well. Oh, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps me out a ton. See you guys soon.